From the Income Protection Journal, welcome to the Income Protection Podcast with Jamie Fleischner.
Today on the show, we're thrilled to welcome Dr. Isheet Patel, a board-certified internal medicine physician and co-founder of Peak Concierge Care in Lone Tree, Colorado. Dr. Patel's approach to medicine goes far beyond traditional healthcare. He blends deep clinical expertise with empathy, personalized attention, and a commitment to whole person health. Dr. Patel earned his medical degree from Windsor University School of Medicine and completed his residency in internal medicine at University of Pittsburgh. He is dedicated to providing compassionate, comprehensive, research-backed care, fostering trusting relationships with his patients, and empowering them to take an active role in their health journey. Dr. Patel focuses on prevention, early detection, and holistic management of disease, helping patients optimize their health and quality of life. Whether it's chronic condition management or preventative strategies for long-term wellness, his philosophy centers on understanding each individual story and tailoring care accordingly. He also pursues ongoing medical education, having completed advanced coursework through institutions such as Harvard Medical School and the Mayo Clinic to stay at the forefront of internal medicine and wellness practices. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Patel. Thanks for being here.
No, thank you for the introduction. Thanks for having me.
Sure, it's great to see you. So we'll kind of get started with, you work closely with patients through all the early stages of illness. From your perspective, what kinds of medical issues most commonly threaten a professional's ability to work?
That is a really good question. So if you think about the grand scheme of things of how we currently understand healthcare and how diseases occur, right? You go in once a year, you're getting your labs, you get a checkup. If you do that, there's many in this country that do not even do that. And then one day the doctor comes in with a notepad and paper or on the computer says, hey, you have a hypertension. Hey, you have this problem. Start taking this drug now. And that's where a lot of times people are behind the ball, either from a genetic standpoint, they're predisposed, or it is something that they have developed habitually from lifestyle, right? And that's why that whole nature versus nurture debate has been raging for years. But now we definitely know that how you nurture your body definitely can flip on disease levers and turn them on or off, right? So when you think about the biggest diseases now that cause inability to work in the future, I would definitely term it as something called metabolic disease, right? And this is things that pre-diabetes, fatty liver, right? High cholesterol, all these things kind of creep in on you. But just to kind of give you some perspective, people who have obesity, pre-diabetes, fatty liver, high cholesterol, we call this metabolic syndrome, and your affinity to develop cancer is almost 2 to 4 times that of a normal person who doesn't have this. And remember, this is not something you taste or feel, right? It takes decades of neglect, and one day, boom, you bear the fruits of your bad actions, And imagine having liver failure or now diabetes, and your insurance premiums are reflecting that, cancer that you could have hopefully seen. So these are things or pitfalls that I explain to my clients and my patients is that, you have to start focusing on these things, even though the check engine light is not on yet, right? Because if you're ahead of the game, then more than likely you will not develop chronic disease. And that's what it is, right? It's like a death by 1,000 paper cuts. And now you're in your 50s and you're staring down a cancer diagnosis or a liver failure diagnosis, and you never drank a day of your life. It's just you were in caloric surplus all these years, and no one said it was bad to eat processed foods your whole life, right? So it's kind of like how I have to explain to people with the 401k analogy. These micro deposits you put away for 30 years from now is the same micro deposits you need to put in your health, but also kind of like how what you do is your financial stewardship, right? You need to be able to protect yourself and your future, and that's the whole premise of what we do now. So I hope that summarizes some of that. And
that does. So a lot of times people come to us, they're in their they're just kind of getting started with their medical career. They're in their early 30s. And they just can't fathom that something can happen to them. But really, their biggest risk is not necessarily being disabled early on, because, again, that tends to happen in your 40s and 50s, but is losing the ability to buy a policy, your insurability risk. So How fast can those things change? How fast can somebody go from being totally healthy to just one day not being?
Gosh, I could give you so many caveats. And this I would say anyone could relate to. One car crash. One car crash will change the rest of your life, or can have the potential to change the rest of your life. One slip in the tub, one crack of the head on a curb. I had just recently, unfortunately, a 44-year-old lady who went in for a hysterectomy and found to have cancer spread everywhere. No
Oh my
warning
God.
signs. No warning signs, right? And that's what I tell people. It's like sometimes you can change it through how you live, and sometimes you are dealt the cards you are dealt. But for an acute issue or a chronic issue to happen, it can be anytime. Honestly, I'm a big believer in protecting your future self. So I mean, I got disability income as soon as I was a resident because I knew I could get lock in some really good premiums, and then I've kept the same policy through it because no one wants to be disabled or if they're able-bodied their whole life, right? Like you weren't born that way or you didn't develop that condition from a young age, and everyone thinks it's never going to be me, right? But unfortunately, you read the tabloids all the time. Someone died in their 30s and their 40s and their 50s and 60s. It's someone else until it happens to you, right? So it's just kind of like how every day you wake up and you put on your seatbelt, and every day you make sure you try to take your vitamins. You got to do everything like that for every aspect of your life. From a financial standpoint, from a health standpoint. Otherwise, just don't drive with the seatbelt. See how far
Yeah.
that gets you. So it's kind of like that. And what I always kind of try to impress on my patients is that you have to take an active role in your life. No one's going to swoop in your 50s and save you from a financial crisis. No one's going to swoop in to say, oh, now you're disabled and you were underinsured and now you don't have anything to protect your income, or your health for that matter, right? Like no one's you need to have an active role in your own life because we're always thinking that it's going to happen to someone else until you see it happen to someone you know.
Now, what about like mental health? Or that, I know that's becoming a big issue with a lot of people. Where do you see that coming into play in terms of burnout or stress, anxiety? Do you think that's becoming a bigger issue, and is it keeping people from being able to work from your lens?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, I kind of tongue-in-cheek joke with my patients and other clients that 80 to 75% is just being a therapist, and it's psychological, right? Because there's no reason that you are eating processed foods until I can figure out psychologically why that makes you happy or what's going on, why you lead to that choice. And a lot of times, if you think about this, and this I would say is the biggest nugget that we've learned from the last 20, 30 years of research when it comes to longevity, it's chronic stress and cortisol release and all these things that kind of just wither away your body's ability to keep up with their hormones and their immunity and help keep disease at bay. They've always done these studies. Oh, happy people live longer. It's not because they're happy that they live longer. It's because they just know how to help manage stress better, right? And it's just when you manage stress as a genuine, like, oh yeah, I have my ability to turn off, or I have my boundaries, or I have an ability that makes me happy, meaning that I can help control my stress, then you will truly feel like you have a fulfilled life, right? Like you're not constantly running like a chicken with its head cut off, and you're like, oh my God, I got the kids and I get this. And look, everything in life is hard. There's no easy. Being happy is hard. Being sad is hard. It's just hard. You got to choose your
So
hard.
you're saying people that have higher levels of stress, it's actually causing other health issues, not
Oh,
just maybe
100.
mental health. It's causing, like you said, the metabolic and all of those other things.
Absolutely,
So we're sort of
absolutely.
an accumulation of all the decisions that we made and then how we handle the stress.
Correct.
Yeah.
Absolutely, yeah, and it's like now the researchers actually presenting itself, and actually showing that this is now impacting our body, right? And more than anything else, there's a reason why Americans still have, a lower life expectancy, even though we're the most advanced biomedically country in the world. I mean, it's America versus the world and Europe in terms of research that gets pumped out. There's a reason we're doing something right, but why aren't people living longer, right?
Yeah.
We have in some aspects, some would say we have a toxic work culture, and then yes and no. I feel like you can manage the balance, or you can find things that make you happy, and you could thrive in your own career. But it's just that, right? Like you have to take that moment to be like, am I happy or can I do this for the rest of my life without feeling like I'm working? So that truly you have to kind of seek out the vocation, right? A calling rather than work to make money,
Hmm.
and sometimes you got to work before you can have your vocation or vice versa, right? Like it just depends. Like you still got to put food on the table. But absolutely, is kind of marrying like what you're really passionate about and doing that as a life. And that would make you truly quote unquote happy. And again, over time, bring down chronic stress levels.
Yeah. So when people come to you and maybe they are sick and they're not able to work, what are some things that you do to kind of help them get back on track, or things that they can do to help them get back to work?
Absolutely, it's the basics, right? It's you got to start dialing in nutrition, right? You got to start putting in actual nutritious food back in your body. You got to dial in sleep. Sleep is huge. It helps the circadian rhythm and all the other things. Starts helping balance your hormones, your satiety hormones, your hunger hormone, like all of that. Like everything is starting to come down to recovery, and then exercise. There's no simple fix. You gotta move your body, right? Like there's plenty of buzzwords and studies people have heard that, oh, sitting is just bad as smoking. And it's true. It causes vascular inflammation because you're not stimulating your body. We've even seen that folks that work out in their older age help secrete a specific, enzyme or protein or neurochemical, based on how your audience understands this, that actually helps build brain matter. So you want to actually consistently move your body, consistently get good sleep, anywhere from 7 to 8, 7.5 to 8.5, depending on who you read and what you talk about, and fueling your body with nutritious food, not just processed food. And what I mean by processed, it's meaning that it's highly calorically dense, but there's not a lot of micronutrients or other nutrition beyond the fact that just sugar and cholesterol or fat.
Yeah. So do you also think too, with advances in medicine, that people are maybe out of work for longer periods of time, or maybe some diseases are dragged out longer, where in the past maybe the survival rate would be lower, but now that there's advances in medicine, which is a good thing, but it might also prolong the disease. Are you seeing any of that?
100%. Because back in the day, things that would probably select you out was infection alone, right? Like if you got sick, there's no antibiotic, you're dying. It didn't matter
Mhm.
how old you were. And honestly, until we started fighting that battle, and now obviously we do really well with that, now you see the chronic diseases take hold, right? And again, like some of it, yeah, you could be unfortunately, have really bad genetics, but there's still a lot that you can do yourself, right? And that's where people eventually, if they ever get to that point of if they are disabled or they cannot work or they had this car crash, obviously yes, like you're maimed, you have this problem, you can't ever do anything. But even then, in those situations, there are little things that you could still try to make micro habits and change. So, for example, I actually have a patient who had a brain trauma, really bad brain trauma 20, 30 years ago. And it's sad, right? He's in a wheelchair. I mean, he barely can talk, and it's definitely affected his brain. But it was funny because I was talking to his family the other day, and I said, how is his sleep? Maybe he has bad sleep. And then we tested him for sleep apnea. It turned out he did have it really bad because of the brain injury. We put him on the treatment, which is a CPAP, and oh my God, the family's like, he's speaking more. He's actually not falling asleep during the day.
Wow.
He's having more mental lucidity. And even for that's what I mean. Like you can't reverse the damage that he had, but you could still make the quality of life better, right?
Yeah.
And that's how you want to think about life, because it's a continuum of time, right? Like you don't know where you're going to be 10 years from now. You don't know what's going to happen to you 20 years from now. But if you cannot fully reverse a course or you cannot improve your situation, you can at least make the quality of your life better, right?
Yeah.
And that's where, yes, people are living with more chronic disease, and that's what I have to focus on in some of the older patients or patients who are burdened with a disease that we cannot cure, right? Because we don't have a cure for this, but we can help you manage it. But let's also focus on the quality of life. Like, what makes you happy, Mr. and Mrs. Jones? Like, do you want to go see your friends more? Do you want to be sleeping better? Do you want to be, more socially active all over again? And let's give you that confidence. Let's have you do a workout plan. That kind of stuff. It's like these are these small instances and little minutia things that don't seem like a big deal, but it can make a big impact, right? Even living with a chronic disease or being disabled.
Yeah. We're talking with Dr. Isheet Patel about taking a proactive approach to health and staying at the top of your game professionally. When we come back, we'll explore why protecting your income is just as important as protecting your health, especially for high income professionals. Stay with us. So, a lot of things that I'm reading are also talking about cognitive issues. So, I
Mhm.
know that that's something that more and more people are dealing with. Is that something that you're familiar with? And maybe if you can talk a little bit about cognitive decline.
Oh, absolutely. So we're now seeing, and you might see, the headlines and the research coming out more and more about this of, chronic alcohol consumption, for example, and excess, and, more than that social drink. That plays a role because alcohol is a neurotoxin as well as it is for like a heart, liver, your bone marrow. It's a lot. It causes 22 different types of cancers in some
Oh,
research that's
wow.
coming out. So it's just we're seeing habits, right? Like smoking, alcohol, obviously overindulging in extra food, that over time can lead to brain decline or what we say inflammation, right? And that chronic inflammation eventually will start to eat away at how your body's ability to repair its brain, how to maintain the brain mass, how to kind of live longer. So when it comes to like what we do, again, we're emphasizing these other habits that you can try to influence throughout the life and try to maximize brain no matter what are dealt with when growing up or injury or disability or whatever. So you want to always kind of maximize, nutrition. So if you don't eat well, because we don't get all the nutrients in a given day, then taking a multivitamin, getting enough sleep, hydrating well. It's kind of like, if you're going to build a house, if you don't have all of the components to build a house, then how do you build a sound foundation and let alone not have the draft come in all the time, right? So it's the same thing with your body. It's no different. Like you need all the building blocks, right? Sleep, nutrition, movement, because same thing, the circulation to the brain, the movement of what you do, how you repair your body, and what you repair with all makes a lasting impact.
So it sounds like, I mean, a lot of health has to do with the decisions you make and all the different habits. But one of the things that you also mentioned was genetics.
Mhm.
And I know there's a lot of movement in that area too. So maybe if you can talk a little bit about genetic tests and how that might help position you with what kind of lifestyle choices you should make or how you should treat those types of patients.
Absolutely. So there's obviously things that you're genetically predisposed to, but now there's a very fascinating field of study called epigenetics, right? So meaning that you have a certain amount of diseases that are embedded in your DNA. Now what we're studying is how do these disease levers get activated, and how do they get inactivated? And, because we've done this in twin studies, we've done this in long-term prospective studies in siblings, because they technically should have the same genetics, but then why does one twin become terribly unhealthy? And then why does one twin not have any disease at all? And that, again, I hate to say it, it does eventually translate back to some habits. Obviously, you cannot always change what you're born with, but you have the ability for the rest of your life to influence what disease levers you turn on and off. You know, and that again, it's like, for example, if I'm going to be a chronic drinker and smoker, then I'm damaging my DNA. So that's why there's a higher risk of people developing cancer with these habits as opposed to people who are non-smokers and non-drinkers, right? I wasn't predisposed more than the next guy to have that in my genetics, but eventually my body broke. Some people can smoke 30 years and never have cancer. Well, great. They've got great genetics. So that's what I mean. It's like you sometimes are those cards you can't change, right? It's kind of like we don't choose our families and our parents
Yeah.
and what family we're born into, but you can influence then the other things you do through the active decisions that you make. And it is widely being studied. Obviously, we have gene editing therapies, CRISPR therapies, designer babies, if you want to say. We're getting more sophisticated, but then it's like it's starting to borderline. Are we playing God? And the ethics component
Yeah,
of
that's a
this.
whole other that's a whole other can of worms. But yeah, it is happening. And there's been a lot of debate about these designer babies, if you know your family has a predisposition, if you can shut off some of those things, which can be great. But on the flip side, if people use it the wrong way because they want, somebody to be really tall with blue eyes or certain gender or
Yes,
whatever. So
correct.
that, you know,
Very
necessarily
slippery
mean
slope.
that it's going to have the correct outcome. So for the people that are listening, so I mean, it sounds like, just sort of the basics, eating, sleeping, nutrition, and those types of things. But do you see things kind of happening in people when they're in their 20s, their 30s, their 40s, and their 50s? Like, what are certain things that people should be doing during those years? And again, from the perspective of, income protection, because it's the early years where you can qualify for the benefits, but you don't think you necessarily need them, but they're more, palatable in terms of the premiums. The later years, if you wait too long, you can't get it anymore. And it's when you kind of need it. What are certain things in each decade that people should be thinking about in terms of their health?
Yeah, I think in the younger decades, a lot of it's cutting out risky habits, and drugs and things that we ingest, because a lot of it then it's like you're Superman, right, or Superwoman, like you don't have any problems because you have youth. Youth is a wonderful drug. You feel impenetrable. I mean, I challenge a person in their 20s. They'll probably drink 20 drinks. I don't feel hungover. Do the same when you're 40 and let me know how it feels.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, so it's just everything eventually slows down. And I hate to say this, it's not a matter of if or when. Chronic disease will start setting in your midlife to later life, right? And again, some of it's like how you steward your ship, right? Like if you let all the dinks and stuff get bigger and the cracks get bigger, and now you have leaks happening, then you accelerate that process. Or if you could slow that process. So it's very fascinating, right? I had a 90-year-old gentleman. This guy wanted to hike the upper Grand Canyon rim. And I said, "You're 90? How the heck is that possible?" Right? That's a challenging hike. And this guy's riding 20 miles a week on his bike. And then I have other 90-year-olds that barely can stand, right? So some of it, it's like genetics, yes. How you tend to your body, yes. 20s and 30s will never know, to be honest, unless you have a very bad genetic predisposition to form high cholesterol or high blood pressure or some of these things. And sometimes you cannot, out like changing habits so much that you can't change what's going to happen. So then, yeah, okay, now you have something starting, but it's usually into your 40s, 50s, 60s, and then definitely in your 70s and 80s, you'll really start seeing these changes at your body and what we call the process of aging, right? So for me, the same thing is that I knew this. After being a doctor, I was going to be an ICU doctor. I decided against it because, you can't change much. You're either making them live or die. So I said I wanted to go into primary care to help prevent them getting the ICU. So that's what I have been doing for the last, decade almost. So the whole process of when I understood this prospect of, hey, by the time I'm 50, 60, 70, and 80, and now my premiums are jacked up, I'm going to start getting my disability stuff and my life insurance policies when I'm young, when I don't have problems. Because not only are the premiums going to be better, but then two, I'm going to have better income protection going forward because they can't just jack up my rates because I've already locked in some of these rates now. So I have life insurance policies. I have disability policies. I have a lot of that because I started to think about my financial stewardship from a young age. I said, I spent my whole 20s of my decades becoming a doctor. But then one car crash can change all of that, right? In terms of my income protection. And then all those years were for nothing. So I started thinking about my financial vehicles as well, of like how you can leverage, smart decisions through insurance companies and policies to start making a financial pathway. So when I am in my 60s and my 70s, and I have the capabilities of drawing from these as income or protection if something were to happen to me, and my family's protected if something were to happen to me, and my earning potential, then you want to start thinking about that as much as, again, you think about your job and you think about what food you put in your body, because at the end of the day, money is a fuel source to interact with this world, and especially in the first world. So if you do not have enough at a certain age, you're going to be still working in your 80s. And no offense to the people who are, and some people do it for reasons, but you don't want to be living paycheck to paycheck at that age. It gets tougher and tougher to put in those 80 hours a week.
Yeah. It's interesting because I'm seeing a lot of parallels between what you do and what I do, because a lot of our new clients come to us in their 20s and 30s, and the decisions that they make financially to lay the foundation to protect their income will impact their entire financial future, whether they have a claim or if they need to buy more without having to answer medical questions. And from where you're sitting, the decisions you make in your 20s, your 30s, and your 40s, not smoking, not eating the processed foods, exercising, getting good sleep, even just the basics, lay the foundation for the body, whether or not there's
Yes.
going to be problems later on. So I think there are
Yeah.
a lot of parallels.
Oh, absolutely, right. And a lot of people always kind of scoff at really wealthy people, right? Billionaires and multimillionaires and say, oh, look, the rich just keep getting richer and this and that. But after, I became a small business myself, you see a lot of how the US tax code is designed to help with entrepreneurship. But then too, you start learning of strategies that these wealthy folks do to protect their like their assets and protect themselves from liabilities, right? I mean, no one, if I give you a date and time and place that you're going to have a car crash there, you're not going to drive on that road. Yeah.
Exactly.
So
You're also a concierge doctor, which is also interesting too, because your clientele might be on the wealthier side, and these are people that are willing to invest in their bodies and saying,
yes.
what can I do to take measures to take care of myself for longevity, for a good lifestyle, for prosperity and everything else too.
Absolutely, but the thing with, like, for example, for your parallel on this in this setting is like, I was a resident paying for a disability and life insurance, right? I didn't have a lot of money. I mean, I was at that time in residency, I was being paid like $52,000, right? And after having years of medical school debt, and so it wasn't much. It's like a couple of $100, maybe 1,000 now. And I look at it, I'm like, oh gosh, I really locked in this insane policy.
Mhm.
And I'm thanking my future self because of the decisions I made by my younger self. But again, like, especially like, even if you do term life, right? Like, it's not that expensive. But imagine, it's like, if your family ever needed it to pay off its debts and survive, that's life-changing sum. Same thing with disability. It's like, if you cannot work now and you're now seeing that check coming through, you're gonna cry tears every day.
Mhm.
You're like, thank
Yes,
God,
absolutely. Yeah.
thank God I was smart enough to do this. And same thing, it's like when you're younger and you have the high earning potential, you want to protect yourself, right? That's what a lot of these, smarter people will start doing. It's that they're savvy also from the business standpoint, but they're savvy with how they protect themselves, right? And it's one of those things where no one knows what will happen to us, right? If we did, then we would be petrified and live in chronic stress even more than we do. But you want to kind of have that intuition of, tomorrow's not guaranteed. That's the one saying I tell all my patients, because if you operate in that mindset, oh yeah, I'm going to wake up tomorrow, that's not true. Then why do people keep dying? So it's just, when I've seen it from a physician standpoint, the death, I've seen young people die for no reason, I've seen old people die, and every spectrum in between, that we wouldn't have morgues for baby caskets, right? Like, it doesn't make sense
Mhm.
if that is what it is. But if you are in a financial position to buy policies to protect your income, or if your life insurance, for example, that will help your family when you're gone, then I would always recommend doing it, because it's just, it's a no brainer, because these are small sums now. But then by the time you try to write a policy when you're older, because I get this paperwork from disability and life insurance companies, and they see all. So if you didn't have disease and you bought this stuff, you're getting a much better rate. If you have disease now in your 30s and 40s and 50s, you're getting a much higher rate, because I have to submit this paperwork to these companies for my people that they're being requested from.
And people typically don't get healthier as time goes on.
No,
They
no.
usually just don't.
If we find that person, we should squeeze the life from them and,
Although
and
sometimes
shoot us
people
off.
do,
You
make
know.
changes in their lifestyle and do get healthier at some point
Oh,
and can
absolutely. Yeah.
reverse
No.
some of those. Yeah.
Yeah. Absolutely. There's some people, right, like that. Of course, can have a lot of metabolic challenges or other problems in their life that they take it upon themselves to really change. But it's kind of like tires, right? It's like, if you ride tires hard enough, you'll eventually wear out the tread, no matter what you do. So it's like, yes, you got healthier in this decade, but you still accelerated aging for the years
You
that
might have
you were
already done
not.
some damage. Exactly.
Yes,
So,
exactly.
well, thank you for coming on the show today. I really appreciate your insight. I find it really fascinating thinking about all the different things that you can do to improve your health and what, it sounds like one of the things that I really picked up was the metabolic changes and the problems and people that all of the decisions that you make sort of accumulate. And then one day, you know, a switch goes off and
Just,
everything
yeah,
changes. So,
absolutely.
yeah.
No worries. And thank you for having
Well,
me.
thank you so
I
much for
really
coming on
enjoyed
the
my
show. I
time.
really appreciate it.
Absolutely.
From the Income Protection Journal, you've been listening to the Income Protection Podcast with Jamie Fleischner.